That entire sequence was shot on one lens. It was not color graded. There were no effects added whatsoever. I didn't have to pull focus. Really, this is a great time to be alive and shooting video on mirrorless cameras because the tools that we have nowadays are so much better and so much cheaper than they were just a few short years ago. This is the new Blazar Apex 35mm T1.8 autofocus anamorphic Super 35 lens. And it's a mouthful, and it's the best anamorphic lens that I've ever tested on this channel. And in this video, I'm going to be checking it out. The packaging is simple and clean, white box. Inside there is a warranty card and the lens. And I have to admit, part of why I like this lens so much is just how it looks. I handle a lot of lenses on this channel and most are trying hard not to stand out, whereas this one is trying to make a statement. And while there may be some practical implications of the silver barrel reflecting in a professional shoot, for the vast majority of us trying to make a cool video, this isn't going to affect much. And it's nothing that a little gaff tape can't fix if it does. This is a solid feeling lens. It's all metal in construction, weight is 730 grams, and the size is significant but not outrageous. The color scheme is going to be polarizing. You have orange, you have some blue accents in the form of text and a rubber gasket. There's some black and that silver section. I think it's an interesting lens to look at. It looks pretty good on display. Starting at the rear, there is a metal mount, electronics, USB-C port for firmware updates, rubber gasket for weather sealing, and this is the E-mount version, the only one that's available, but more are coming this year. The orange section features the aperture ring, which is buttery smooth, well damped, declicked, and unlike the Sirui anamorphic that I recently tested, there is no option to turn that click on. The focus ring is next, and this is geared with hard stops after 180 degrees of rotation. It's very light and smooth to rotate. It's a well done focus ring. However, it is not mechanical, it is electronic. That being said, the hard stops make repeating focus pulls possible, unlike the unlimited rotation that the manual focus ring on the Sirui does that I mentioned already. On top, there is a giant Blazar logo, and on a side note, this might be one of the best rebrands in recent history. Blazar used to be Greatjoy, which made a handful of lenses that I reviewed a while ago, but this feels like a completely different company. Apex 35 T1.8 on this side, autofocus manual focus switch, and you get the same on the other side. 1.33x AF anamorphic lens, and around the front a convex front lens element, no writing or text here. It's nice and clean. Inside there is an autofocus motor that is near silent, a 16 bladed diaphragm, and the front supports a 77mm filter. Now let's talk about the three important areas: aspect ratio, bokeh, and flare, as well as a few reasons this lens shines if you shoot APS-C. First up is the 1.33x squeeze factor. The more that I use 1.33x anamorphic lenses on my FX30 and A6700, the more I think there is really no need to get a 1.5 or a 1.8 or a 2x. This lens compresses information, it sends it to the sensor, and when you are editing, you de-squeeze this information, and it makes for this near perfect widescreen image with natural black bars on top and bottom. It's a perfect squeeze factor for a 16:9 sensor, at least in my opinion. In terms of bokeh, things are smooth, not distracting. There is some outlining at times with very bright light sources, but in most situations there's nothing distracting. You get nice footballs with this lens, and this was a surprise. Blazar did some sort of magic in this regard, because at 35mm and at 1.33x, most anamorphic lenses would give you lopsided circles. The Sirui that I tested gave me some sort of weird hexagons. This Blazar is positively brilliant in the way that it gives you these ovals. It looks like bokeh that you would see on a 1.5x anamorphic, not a 1.33x one, which is great news. More oval is more better. Lastly, the flare is brilliantly done with this lens. It's subtle in most situations, but if you shoot into the sun, it will create some cinematic streaks of light. This Apex features natural flares, meaning it will give you horizontal lines in the same color as the source of light, and these horizontal lines are what anamorphic lenses are all about. And this is just a personal preference thing. Some people want more flare, some people will want less. I think that this is near perfect, but again, that's just my opinion. Now, there are a few other things that I wanted to mention about this lens, and one major reason that you'd pick this one over the similar Sirui 40mm that I'll get into here shortly. First, sharpness wide open on this lens is good. It's not great, it's not brilliant. This isn't going to challenge a Sigma on a test chart, But for 4K video, I was never looking at the footage thinking, I wish this was sharper. And I shot everything at T1.8. If you wanted to add that sharpness back in, T2.8 and T4 would certainly have given me that. But I personally like the flare and the shallow depth of field too much to really go there. Second, the chromatic aberration. I would say that there is a lot of it wide open, green and purple outlines on contrasting edges. This is a problem on nearly every fast lens out there, and there are very few lenses that have little to no aberration. If this is an issue, stopping this lens down helps as well. So you get sharper images with less chromatic aberration. Third, seemingly intentionally, although I could be convinced otherwise, Blazar added barrel distortion to this lens, or I would argue they just left it there. And this is advertised as classic or vintage look, but it may not appeal to everyone. And I was a bit shocked at how much there was at first, but again, it wasn't too distracting in the overall look, but I wasn't filming flat walls or flat buildings too much with it either. Fourth, the focus breathing is very well handled. There is very little of it to see or complain about, which is a huge positive for this cinema lens. And lastly, the major reason that this lens surpasses the Sirui is that autofocus performance. It's not only that the Sirui is noisy when autofocus, take a listen, and this Blazar is by comparison silent, take a listen. But I think that the transition speeds are more smooth, there's less hunting, and it's just more accurate. It tracks better. Now, this is not to say that this is up there with Sony lenses or even a Sigma or a Viltrox, as it does lose the subject at times, but overall, compared to pulling manual focus, this lens is so much easier to use. This Blazar is a unique combination of design with the flashy exterior and a vintage-inspired optical formula with some flaws, but beautiful bokeh and flares, all in a budget-friendly, at least for anamorphic, autofocusing package. I have enjoyed using it much more than I thought that I would have. And while I have both the Blazar and the Sirui as options, again, I find myself reaching for this each and every single time that I'm out and want to shoot something cinematic and fun. This lens is set to release in early March. I don't have final pricing on it, but the 50mm version that is already out is priced at $899, and it is on a back order. So I'd imagine that this 35 would be priced around the same, so $900, and probably go into some sort of back order situation as well shortly after release. But I'll update the description with some links to pricing and specs once those are available. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for more. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.